Hello, hello, Kingmakers. Good morning. It is 9 a.m. over here. Coffee ready to go. How are you? Um, it's my birthday today, so happy birthday to me. And I got um, antibiotics and um, had a flu twice. And getting old is just awesome. So I got a great question. I thought I would answer it today, and as you may have noticed, these Q&A type of formats are going to be quite a bit more formal, informal rather, and we'll see how we go. But the question is great, and I had to think about it a little bit because it's time to go a little bit deeper on a topic that I have brought up before. So that's awesome. And also, I went to my first crypto event ever a few days ago. ETH Warsaw. It was really cool, really well organized, great location, met some nice people, and that was cool. With that said, I think it's time we chat about perceived value, right? So the question from Sanjay was, how can I increase the perceived value? I've talked about this idea of intrinsic value and perceived value. And so this is a great question because we have to dig a little bit deeper into this, right? And so, as I thought about this morning, uh, I kind of broke it down into we have to take things into subcategories. Okay, so if we're talking about let's increase the perceived value of something, well, what is that something? And so, this is not going to be sort of an exhaustive list because I just thought about it this morning, but it'll get us going. So, there's a couple of things that if we're talking about projects, kind of increasing the perceived value of a project or a person, there's typically probably going to be things that are, the things that you're doing are going to be falling into a category of increasing the perceived value of your legitimacy, capability, trust, quality, social proof or FOMO, right? Scarcity, things of that nature. So that's, I think, a good starting point for us to go. And so we really have to approach this from the angle of, okay, so how do you increase the perceived value? Well, it's based on your objective, right? And it's kind of based on, like, what do you want people to do and what business are you really in? So if you want somebody to buy your PFP NFT, right? That's going to be very much about social proof. And so this is why I've brought up in the past that people in crypto are not inherently against advertising, but running advertising for a PFP NFT project is not the way to go, because this is exactly why the perceived value, if you have to pay for ads to show me the PFP, there is no social proof and you are failing at the one thing. Like, what business are you really in? If you're in the PFP NFT business, you're in the social proof business. And so by advertising the PFP, you are completely just eliminating yourself out of the your chances of succeeding here. So, and this is something I'm going to go a little bit deeper in later on, but when it comes to increasing perceived value, I would say it's almost more about what you don't do than what you actually do, because it's the things that you are doing wrong that's killing the perceived value. So, like, if you have something good to show that's going to increase the perceived value, you want to show that. But if you have things that are going to decrease the perceived value, you never lie, but you just don't want to, like, put it in people's faces, right? And I'll get to that a bit more. So, okay, so if you're doing PFP NFT project, that would be that, right? If you want, VCs to invest in your project, well, now we're optimizing for things like the perceived value around our legitimacy as a project, my capability as a founder, and also things like traction and FOMO, social proof. Like, if they see that other investors are investing, they are no different than other human beings. They're going to want to invest as well. And if they see that nobody else wants to invest, they're also going to be like, why should we be the first ones to write the check, right? Uh, are you looking for somebody to kind of follow you as a person or a personal brand? In this case, we're looking more into the perceived value in terms of capability, right? Do you have something that they need? Do they feel like you've got some magic or some secret or some entertainment? Like, people follow people for different reasons. But if we're talking about capabilities, like, do they think that you have something that they need or that they want? Are you looking for people to use your central exchange, for example? Well, now we're really optimizing for trust. So then it's like, how do we increase the perceived value around our trust? How do we increase the perceived trust of our brand? Do you want developers to build on your layer one blockchain, right? Now we're talking about like the quality of the technology, like we're increasing the perceived value of the quality of technology. Also social proof, right? Devs are no different than other human beings in that respect. Like they're not going to be immune to being affected by sociology or fame, let's call it, or FOMO. Then we have also sustainability. Like, do they have a belief that this L1 is going to succeed and it's going to be around for a long time? And so it's a good idea for me to like invest my time into learning this language or becoming a developer in this ecosystem and so on and so forth. So to summarize that, what is it that you're optimizing for? Like, what does the target audience need to believe in order to get them to do what you want them to do? So once we know that, now we can start to talk about signals, because that is all perceived value is. It's good or bad signals that you are putting out there that people are picking up on consciously or subconsciously, which is impacting how they feel about your project. So it's basically all this like sub communication that's going on. So I'll give you just some examples to think about, right? Like your website design. So if we take, let's see, if yeah, let's say an L1, let's say it's an L1, right? And you're trying to attract developers, right? And you have a really just kind of like a crappy website. What signal? Like, it's not even about the design itself. It's not about the fact that the design is bad. But what about the signal that it's sending that you do not have the capability to even put together a nice website in 2024? What does that say about your team, right? How are you supposed to deliver on something that's much more difficult if you can't even do a nice website? You know what I mean? So it's the subcommunication. It's not about the design itself. It's about the subcommunication of the inability to put together a nice website. And then, so let's talk about like, is there an office? Do you have an office? In crypto, a lot of companies don't. And this is like having an office, especially if you have like a big office, if you get a nice office, this is something that I, as a marketer, would put out there, because I would say that the thing that is communicating is legitimacy, right? Now you can go into and analyze whether there's truth to that or not. There isn't, or sorry, there might be, but it doesn't have to be. But if somebody sees a big office, they see a lot of people, our brains are going to just default to like, okay, there's got to be some legitimacy here. Now, it's not always going to be like that. Like, let's talk about FTX. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a default that just because somebody has a nice big office that it's a legit project, but it is gonna be a signal or a sub-communication that is in your favor. And what's the opposite of that, right? Let's say you're an L1 blockchain and you guys don't have an office, and your main founder works from his kitchen in a crappy apartment. And when he's putting out a video on social media, you can see him sitting there and like he doesn't even have a home office. He's just sitting in his kitchen. Now you can judge or you can like, yeah, you can judge people for judging that, right? Or you can accept that that is how we work as human beings, and you can be mindful of that, and you can make sure that you do things that are going to be in your favor, right? So is there something wrong with working in your kitchen? No. Are people going to judge an L1 where the founder is working out of his kitchen versus the guy or the L1 that's got a nice office in Manhattan with, a large office with a group of people that, are seemingly pretty coordinated? Are they going to judge those two, like all else equal? Are they going to judge those two projects the same? No, they will not, right? That is the perceived value, because there's nothing really that prevents the guy in the kitchen from having a project that's even better than one with the big office, right? Right. So, what else do we have? So, do you have investors, right? This is something you'd want to be putting on your website, because if somebody has co-signed you, that is also a signal for your legitimacy, capability, and also they can just kind of assume that somebody else has done their due diligence. Somebody else that's smart, even, that has a team, has done their due diligence. And if it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough for you, right? Clients, this is maybe more kind of service-based stuff. Do you have partners? If so, who? And on the client side, like, have you ever seen those like agencies or consultants and stuff like that? They'll put like logos, or software companies even. They'll put logos of their clients, right? Here's who we work for. Do you ever see like 5 logos and you're like, I don't recognize a single one of them? Did that do anything in terms of increasing the perceived value for that company? Not really. They did confirm that, like, yeah, we probably had like a few clients, but typically when you show the logos, they should be logos that people recognize. Otherwise, you just leave them out. You can say we've had 5 clients, but don't put the logos on there, because that is not actually adding anything. In fact, it's doing almost the opposite, because people typically started doing that. They would put the logos on the site because it was, a cosign. It was social proof that we are good enough to work with these companies. And then people saw that as like a must, like, okay, we must put the logos on our website. That is going to show to everybody else that we are legitimate. But then some, a lot of companies, they didn't have like a good enough track record to do that. And so they just put a bunch of logos on there that people didn't know. And the people came in thinking like, I was meant to be impressed by this, and now I wasn't. So now it's kind of like having that, almost like the opposite effect, So again, you have to think equally as much about what am I not doing as what am I actually doing. Continuing, language. So this is really an interesting one. You'll find this. I heard somebody talk about Jordan Peterson. He was talking about how Jordan Peterson's views on religion were bullshit. And he said people buy into his spiel about religion because his language and the way that he talks about it is so complex that you can't understand it. And because you don't understand it, you almost automatically default to the idea that it must be so genius and beyond you that it's brilliance, right? Which is really interesting. And so, because this is also a fine line, like there is something to be said for using very clever language. Like by clever, I don't mean like puns and stuff. I mean like intelligent language, in the sense that it speaks to credibility. It speaks to the fact that, or even capability. It speaks to the fact that you know stuff that maybe the other people don't know, and you are smart, right? There's intelligence. That is sending a sub communication or a signal that there's capability there. What you don't want to have happen is your actual users and customers don't understand what the hell it is that you're doing. Like, so you should be using this very strategically, right? Like people should understand what your project is about. So I would say on your website, you want to have kind of like a third grade level, language. But if you're making videos and things of that nature, like, when I got into crypto, I remember watching these like Charles Hoskinson videos. I was like, yeah, I don't understand a word he's saying. Must be a genius. That's how people's brains work. Going on, have you acquired things that are difficult to get? Does your project have a regulatory license? These are all great signals and symbols that we want to be putting at the forefront of all of our marketing, websites, social media, yada, yada. Have you had a security audit from a company that's, that has a good reputation, and so on and so forth? So that's just to give you a little bit of a flavor, like some of the things to think about. And I want to come back to this idea of like what you don't do is probably more important than what you do. And so we talked about the logos idea, right? Another thing that I've seen is, video platforms that come up. In the beginning, they don't have views, right? And I've seen video platforms that remove the view count. So they'll default to putting the view count under the video because that's what YouTube does. And then they realize like, people land on our site, they see that most of our videos have basically less than 5 views. This is sending the signal that nobody's using our platform, which gets people to default to the idea that I should also not be using the platform. This is 100% the right move. If you have low views, you do not want to show the views, right? So you're not lying, you're just being very selective about what you put at the forefront. Give you another example. I had a company that I was helping out a little bit, did some consulting because they found me on this YouTube channel, and you might be watching this. And they were based out of South Africa, and they had a pretty cool project. And on their website, I remember seeing that the company was registered in Botswana. Now, you have to be mindful of stereotypes and how the general perception of things like countries are, right? Like, for example, all else equal, would you rather have an Italian sports car or a Chinese sports car? all of you are saying Italian, right? But I said all else equal. So the car is really the same, but we just default to like, okay, Italian sports car, they're good at sports cars, right? So I don't know shit about Botswana, but I'd rather see, if I'm talking about a crypto project, I'd want to see Dubai on there, right? I want to see Switzerland on there, right? I want to see a country that's going to be communicating trust, legitimacy, et cetera, et cetera. And it's my own ignorance here. Botswana might be a great crypto hub. I don't know. But that's why you have to be mindful of how people stereotype, because you can't ignore it. Well, you can, but you're just gonna screw yourself over. So I wouldn't lie about it. I just wouldn't put it on the front page of the website that we are registered in Botswana, because the person doesn't need to know that, because there's nothing shady. Like they explained it, it was kind of like somewhat of a crypto hub in Africa. But all of us people outside of Africa, we're not going to be knowledgeable about that. And so we're going to be like, yeah, why isn't this in Dubai, or why isn't this in Switzerland, and so on and so forth. So those are some of the thoughts that I have for now on perceived value. So you want to be very clear on like, okay, well, what is it that we're trying to get people to do, right? So what kind of project are we? What are we trying to get people to do? Are we trying to increase the perceived value of our legitimacy, capability, trust, quality, social proof, scarcity, and so on and so forth? And I think one of the main things here, my main themes from today's video, is really what you don't do is almost more important than what you do. So really look at every element that you're putting out there and think about what signal is that sending, and am I going to be better off if I didn't send that signal at all? Like another example, right? If we come, or a previous example rather, if we come back to the L1 founder who is sitting in his kitchen, if he just flipped his laptop around and all he had was just a completely white wall, there was nothing to judge there, right? That would be infinitely better than the kitchen, because the kitchen says you don't even have a home office, right? So then how many resources can you have as a project to, what is your probability of being able to execute a project of this difficulty if you don't have enough resources to even have an office? Whereas the white wall, you don't know. So you don't even get the chance to judge it. And I'll leave you with that. And there's some exciting things coming that I'm going to be sharing with you guys in the future. And thank you for watching today's video. If you've got a question for me, you can tweet at me at @ByTheKingmaker, and I'll keep making these videos, and keep going to these crypto events, because that was a lot of fun. So I'll probably see some of you guys in 3D at some point. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.